The Harrison family reunion was in full swing, crystal glasses clinking against silver trays as my relatives paraded their successes around my parents' expansive backyard. I stood in a quiet corner, nursing a glass of wine and watching my sister hold court near the pool. "You should see my new office," Olivia was telling our cousins, her designer sundress probably worth more than my car. "Corner suite, full staff, amazing view of the city. That's what happens when you work hard and make the right choices in life." I suppressed a smile, taking another sip of wine. If only she knew about my office, the one that occupied the entire top floor of the city's most prestigious building. Speaking of choices, our cousin Beth leaned in. "How's your sister doing?" "Still working at that little company no one's heard of." Olivia's laugh carried across the yard. "Oh God, Sarah. She's still playing entrepreneur or whatever she calls it. Started some consulting firm that probably operates out of her garage." "Such a shame," Beth clicked her tongue. "She had so much potential." I thought about the documents sitting on my real desk, including Olivia's resume which had arrived yesterday. She had no idea she'd just applied for a job at my company, the same little company she loved to mock. "Sarah." My mother's voice cut through my thoughts. "Stop hiding and come join your sister. She's telling everyone about her promotion." Of course she was. Olivia had been bragging about her new vice president position at Parker & Sons for weeks. Never mind that the company was struggling, or that her department's performance had been declining for months. "I'm fine here, Mom." "Don't be antisocial," Olivia called out. "Come tell everyone about what do you call it? Your business venture." I walked over slowly, aware of the judging eyes taking in my simple black dress and lack of designer accessories. "It's a consulting firm, Olivia. We help companies optimize their operations and improve profitability." "Right," she smirked. "How many employees do you have now?" "2. 3. Try 850 spread across 3 continents." But I just smiled. "Enough to get the job done." "Well," our Aunt Margaret chimed in, "at least you're trying. Not everyone can be as successful as Olivia." I thought about Phoenix Consulting Group's latest acquisition, a $2.3 billion deal that had made headlines in the business world. Headlines my family apparently never read. Speaking of success, Olivia straightened, preening, "Guess who's been headhunted by Eclipse Industries? They're offering me a director position." My heart skipped a beat. Eclipse Industries was my company's public face, the name everyone knew, while Phoenix Consulting Group operated behind the scenes. The position she was applying for would report directly to me. "That's wonderful," I said carefully. "When's your interview?" "Next week." She beamed. "Tuesday morning. The recruiter said I'm exactly what they're looking for. Finally, a company that recognizes real talent." I took another sip of wine to hide my expression. Tuesday's interview was with me, though she wouldn't know that until she walked into the room. "I heard Eclipse Industries is very selective," our cousin Mark said. "Their CEO is supposed to be some kind of business genius. No one even knows who they are, very private." "Please," Olivia waved her hand dismissively. "It's probably just some old man who doesn't want people to know he's running the company from a golf course. Besides, with my experience, they'd be lucky to have me." If she only knew she was talking about her little sister, the one she'd spent years dismissing as a failure. "Sarah used to want to work there, didn't you?" Mom added helpfully. "But they never called you back." "Because I was too busy building it." "Things work out the way they're supposed to, Mom." "Oh honey," Olivia's voice dripped with fake sympathy. "You shouldn't give up. Maybe once I'm in a leadership position there I can put in a good word for you. Get you an entry-level position or something." The irony was almost too perfect. But I just nodded. "That's thoughtful of you." "It is, isn't it?" She preened. "I've always tried to help you, Sarah. It's not your fault you're not as ambitious as me. Some people are just meant for bigger things." I thought about the file on my desk containing her company's performance reports. About how her successful department was actually hemorrhaging money. About how her current company was desperately trying to stop their stock price from falling. "You know what they say," I offered mildly. "Appearances can be deceiving." "What's that supposed to mean?" Her eyes narrowed. "Nothing. Just that success comes in many forms." She laughed, that dismissive sound I'd grown so used to. "Says the person whose biggest client is probably a local coffee shop." Face it, Sarah, you're just not cut out for the corporate world. That's why you're hiding in your little consulting business while I'm out here making real moves. Our relatives nodded in agreement. After all, Olivia was the successful one, the one with the prestigious job title, the designer wardrobe, the country club membership. I was just the disappointing daughter who had walked away from a real career to start my own business. Tell them about your new condo, Mom urged Olivia. The one with the rooftop pool. Oh yes. Olivia brightened. 47th floor, custom everything. The monthly payment is probably more than Sarah makes in a year, but you have to invest in yourself, right? I thought about my penthouse apartment, the one that occupied the entire top floor of the city's most exclusive building. The one none of them knew about because I'd never seen the need to brag. How can you afford that on a vice president's salary? Cousin Beth asked, impressed. Olivia's smile flickered slightly. Well, smart investments. Plus, Parker & Sons really values their executives. We get all kinds of bonuses and perks. I knew for a fact that Parker & Sons had frozen executive bonuses 6 months ago due to declining profits. Just like I knew Olivia had been taking out loans to maintain her lifestyle. It was amazing what you learned when your company specialized in corporate analysis. Speaking of Parker & Sons, Aunt Margaret said, I heard they're having some troubles. Stock price dropping and all that. Just temporary setbacks, Olivia said quickly. Every company goes through rough patches. Besides, that's why I'm making the move to Eclipse Industries. Time to take my career to the next level. And what level is that? I couldn't resist asking. She shot me an irritated look. The kind of level you wouldn't understand, Sarah. Eclipse Industries is a major player in the business world. They don't waste time with small-time consultants. I checked my phone. Another email from my HR director about Olivia's upcoming interview. Candidate seems overconfident, she wrote. Claims to have single-handedly increased department profits by 40%, but records show significant losses under her leadership. You never know, I said, tucking my phone away. They might surprise you. Please, she scoffed. The only surprise will be how quickly they offer me the position. I've never failed an interview in my life. There's a first time for everything. He paused, something in my tone finally registering. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing at all. I finished my wine. Good luck with the interview. I'm sure it will be enlightening. As I walked away, I heard her talking to our cousins. God, can you believe her? My sister's such a nobody. Can't even be happy for my success. If only she knew what Tuesday morning would bring. My phone buzzed, a message from my assistant. Conference room booked for Tuesday's interview. Should we keep your name off the door as usual? Yes, I typed back. Let's make this interesting. The rest of the reunion passed in a blur of Olivia's boasting and my relatives' poorly concealed pity. Every introduction was the same. This is Olivia, the vice president, and her sister Sarah. She does something with consulting. By the end of the evening, Olivia was tipsy enough to be even more honest than usual. You know what your problem is, Sarah? She cornered me by the dessert table. You're afraid of real success. That's why you hide in your little business instead of competing in the real corporate world like me. I carefully selected a chocolate truffle. And what makes you think I'm hiding? Oh please. Look at you, discount store dress, basic jewelry, that old car you still drive. Meanwhile, I'm out here living the life you could have had if you weren't such a coward. I thought about Tuesday morning, about the moment she would walk into that conference room expecting to impress some nameless CEO. You know what they say, Olivia. Pride comes before a fall. Tuesday morning arrived bright and clear. I sat in my corner office, watching the city come alive 50 stories below while waiting for my assistant's signal. My navy silk suit, Armani, though I'd never bothered to tell my family I could afford designer clothes, felt like armor. She's here. My assistant's voice came through the intercom. Security just called up. He's making quite an impression. I smiled, imagining Olivia strutting through the lobby in her highest heels, probably talking loudly on her phone to show everyone how important she was. Let's give her the full experience. Have her wait in the main reception area for 15 minutes, then bring her to conference room A. The one with the city view? No. The internal one with the mirrors. I want her to spend some time looking at herself. While I waited, I reviewed her application one more time. The exaggerations were astounding. Projects she claimed to have led but had actually failed. Profits she said she'd generated that were actually losses. It was amazing what people would claim when they thought no one would check. She's getting restless, my assistant reported 10 minutes later. She's asked 3 times to speak to the CEO directly. 5 more minutes. Finally it was time. I walked to the conference room through my private corridor, entering through the back door while my assistant led Olivia in through the front. The CEO will be with you shortly, I heard her say professionally. Finally, Olivia's voice carried that familiar note of condescension. I don't usually wait this long for interviews. Don't you know who I am? Oh, we know exactly who you are, Ms. Harrison. I waited until the door closed before speaking. Hello, Olivia. She spun around, her perfectly styled hair swishing with the movement. For a moment she just stared, her brain refusing to process what she was seeing. Sarah. She blinked rapidly. What are you doing here? Are you interviewing for a position too? I smiled, walking to the head of the table. No, Olivia. I'm conducting the interview. She laughed, that dismissive sound I knew so well. Very funny. Did you get a job as an HR assistant or something? Look, I'm here to meet with the CEO, so if you could just... I am the CEO. The silence that followed was absolute. I could almost hear the gears turning in her head as she tried to make sense of what she was seeing. That's impossible, she finally managed. Eclipse Industries is a multi-billion-dollar company. You run a small consulting firm. Phoenix Consulting Group, I corrected her, which owns Eclipse Industries along with several other major corporations. That little company no one's heard of is actually one of the largest business consulting firms in the country. She sank into a chair, her designer purse slipping from her shoulder. But you drive an old car. You wear cheap clothes. You live in a normal apartment. No, Olivia. I drive a reliable car because I don't need to show off. I wear what I choose because I don't need designer labels to feel successful. And I have a penthouse that takes up the entire top floor of the Wellington building. I just never felt the need to brag about it. Her face had gone pale, making her expensive makeup stand out starkly. Why didn't you tell us? Tell you what? That while you were mocking my career choices, I was building an empire. That while you were taking out loans to maintain your image of success, I was actually achieving it. I pulled out her application. Which brings us to this interesting piece of fiction. He stiffened. My resume is completely accurate. Really? I started reading. Led team to 40% profit increase in Q3. Interesting, since our analysis shows your department actually lost $2.3 million that quarter. Spearheaded digital transformation initiative. The same initiative that failed spectacularly and cost Parker & Sons millions in wasted resources. Those numbers are confidential. How did you dash? I own a consulting firm that specializes in corporate analysis, Olivia. Did you really think we wouldn't fact-check your claims? She rallied slightly, her chin lifting. Fine. So you've done well for yourself. But I'm still highly qualified for this position. My experience dash. Your experience, I cut her off, is a masterclass in failing upward. You've jumped from company to company, always moving on before the consequences of your mismanagement become apparent. But now you've applied to work for someone who knows exactly who you are and what you've done. Is this revenge? She whispered. For how I treated you. Revenge. I laughed softly. Olivia, this is just business. You're not qualified for this position. Your track record is abysmal, your references are weak, and your reputation in the industry is exactly what you've earned. I wouldn't hire you if you were the last candidate on earth. Tears welled in her eyes, threatening to ruin her perfect makeup. You can't do this to me. I'm your sister. Funny. You didn't seem to care about that at the reunion. What was it you called me? A nobody. I didn't mean dash. Yes, you did. You've spent years looking down on me, mocking my choices, dismissing my success because it didn't look the way you thought it should. Well, now you know what real success looks like. It looks like having the power to reject my own sister for a job because she simply isn't good enough. She stood up suddenly, grabbing her purse. I'll tell everyone about this. About how you humiliated me. Go ahead. I smiled. Tell them how your nobody sister turned out to be CEO of the company you desperately wanted to work for. Tell them how all your bragging and showing off meant nothing in the face of actual achievement. Tell them everything. Mom and Dad won't believe it. Actually, they will. Because while you're telling them, My company will be announcing its acquisition of Parker and Sons. Your current employer is about to become part of my corporation. Which means... No, she whispered. Your position is being eliminated. Along with most of the executive positions you've used to prop up your image of success. Maybe it's time to try working somewhere that values actual results over appearances. She stumbled toward the door, then turned back. I could have done it, you know. Been as successful as you. I just what? Chose to focus on looking successful instead of being successful. Decided that designer clothes and fancy cars were more important than actually building something meaningful. I never knew. No, you didn't. Because you were too busy looking down on me to look up and see how far I'd risen. I pressed the intercom. Please escort Ms. Harrison out. And make sure security has her picture. She won't be admitted to the building again. As she left, I heard her phone ring, probably our mother, calling to ask how the interview went. That would be an interesting conversation. Over the next few weeks, the family grapevine exploded. Suddenly, relatives who had dismissed me for years were calling to congratulate me, to reconnect, to ask about job opportunities. My mother left tearful voicemails about how proud she had always been of me. My father sent emails suggesting we have lunch to discuss business opportunities. I ignored them all. Olivia tried to spin the story, of course. Tried to claim she had turned down the position because the company wasn't a good fit. But when the Parker and Sons acquisition was announced and her entire department was eliminated, the truth became impossible to hide. Last I heard, she was working as a junior analyst at a small firm across town. No corner office, no designer wardrobe, no country club membership. Just a regular job where she actually has to prove her worth. My company continues to grow. We've acquired 3 more major corporations, expanded into international markets, and doubled our workforce. I still drive my reliable car, still choose clothes for comfort over labels, still let my success speak for itself. Sometimes I see Olivia at family gatherings. She's quieter now, more subdued. The designer bags are gone, replaced by more modest accessories. She doesn't brag anymore about her corporate success or mock others' career choices. Last week she sent me an email. I understand now what you were trying to tell me all those years. Success isn't about appearances. I'm sorry I never saw that or you clearly. I didn't respond. Some lessons have to be learned the hard way. My office still has the best view in the city. But now when I look out over the skyline, I don't see buildings and businesses. I see a reminder that success doesn't need to be shouted from rooftops or wrapped in designer labels. Sometimes the biggest success stories are written by the people everyone else wrote off as nobodies. And sometimes, just sometimes, the nobody your sister mocked at a family reunion turns out to be the CEO she desperately wanted to impress. The best revenge? It isn't telling everyone about your success. It's letting them discover it for themselves right when they're trying to prove they're better than you. The wedding planning meeting was supposed to last an hour. 3 hours in, my sister Kavya still hadn't acknowledged my presence beyond pointing toward the kitchen when Mom asked about refreshments. Maya can handle the catering coordination, Kavya said without looking up from her Pinterest board, voice dripping with the casual dismissal I'd grown accustomed to over 29 years. She's good at organizational stuff. I refilled water glasses while Kavya held court at Mom's dining table, surrounded by wedding magazines, fabric samples, and enough venue brochures to wallpaper a small apartment. Her fiancé Rohan nodded along enthusiastically, occasionally offering suggestions that Kavya would consider for exactly 3 seconds before explaining why they wouldn't work. The Grandview estate is absolutely perfect, Kavya gushed, sliding a glossy brochure toward Mom and Aunt Priya. Look at these gardens. The ballroom holds 300 guests, there's a private bridal suite, and the mountain views are incredible. It's exactly what I've always dreamed of. Mom studied the photos with the reverence usually reserved for religious artifacts. It's gorgeous, Beta. But isn't it quite expensive? Worth every penny, Kavya declared. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. I refuse to compromise on my vision just to save money. I paused in my water refilling duties, recognizing the Grandview estate immediately. The neoclassical mansion with its terraced gardens and panoramic mountain views was indeed stunning. I should know. I'd been its owner for the past 4 years. Maya, stop hovering and sit down, Mom chided gently. You're part of this family too. Kavya's expression suggested she found this statement debatable. Actually, Maya probably shouldn't be in the wedding party photos. You know how she photographs. I knew exactly how I photographed. Perfectly fine when I wasn't deliberately excluded from family events or relegated to behind-the-scenes roles. But arguing would only confirm their narrative that I was difficult. I could help with logistics instead, I offered, settling into the chair furthest from Kavya's planning command center. Perfect. Kavya brightened at the prospect of free labor. You can coordinate vendor deliveries, handle timeline management, maybe assist the caterers during setup. Keep things running smoothly behind the scenes. Rohan looked up from his phone where he'd been researching venue pricing. Babe, the Grandview estate starts at $50,000 for Saturday events. Are we sure about this? Kavya's smile faltered for exactly 1 second before reassembling into determined optimism. It's our dream venue, Rohan. We'll make it work. Maybe we should look at some alternatives, Aunt Priya suggested diplomatically. There are other beautiful venues that might be more budget-friendly. No. Kavya's voice carried the steel that had gotten her through law school and into her current position at a mid-tier firm. I've been planning this wedding since I was 12. The Grandview estate is perfect and I won't settle for less. She pulled up the venue's website on her laptop, narrating a virtual tour for the table. Look at the great hall with those crystal chandeliers. The ceremony can be in the rose garden, reception in the ballroom, cocktail hour on the terrace. It's like something from a fairy tale. I watched my family fall in love with a property I'd rescued from bankruptcy and transformed into one of the region's premier event destinations. They had no idea that the fairy tale they were admiring existed because I'd invested 2 years and several $1 million bringing it back to its historic grandeur. Have you contacted them yet? Mom asked. I'm calling Monday morning, Kavya said. The wedding coordinator there is supposed to be incredible. Someone named Sarah Chin who's planned events for celebrities and politicians. Sarah Chin was indeed incredible. I'd hired her personally after she'd coordinated events for 3 Fortune 500 companies and a governor's daughter. She reported directly to me through our property management company. What's your backup plan if they're booked? I asked innocently. Kavya's laugh held a note of superiority that made my teeth ache. Maya, people like me don't need backup plans. When you know what you want and you're willing to pay for quality, things work out. People like her. As opposed to people like me, presumably, those who settled for less because they couldn't recognize or afford excellence. Besides, Kavya continued, I've already checked their availability online. June 14th is open, which is perfect timing. 6 months to plan, right in peak wedding season. It's like it's meant to be. I nodded thoughtfully, mentally reviewing the booking calendar that I'd personally approved just last week. June 14th was indeed available, along with a note in the system about enhanced background checks for all bookings during peak season. My phone buzzed with an email from Sarah Chin. Venue inquiry for June 14th, Kavya Patel. Shall I proceed with standard screening process? I typed back quickly, yes. Full financial verification required. The fairy tale was about to get interesting. Monday morning arrived with the kind of crystalline autumn clarity that made me grateful for my corner office's floor-to-ceiling windows. From the 32nd floor of downtown Portland's newest high-rise, I could see the mountain range where the Grandview estate sat nestled among old-growth forests and carefully preserved meadowland. My assistant knocked and entered with the morning's priority files. Sarah Chin called about the Grandview booking inquiry. She wanted to discuss the application before proceeding. Put her through. Sarah's voice carried its usual professional warmth. Good morning, Maya. I wanted to flag the Patel inquiry before moving forward. Standard financial verification shows some concerns. I pulled up Kavya's file on my computer while Sarah outlined the situation. My sister had submitted an application claiming a household income of $180,000, respectable for most venues, but insufficient for a $50,000 event at the Grandview estate, especially when combined with existing credit obligations. She's listed her occupation as associate attorney and provided financial statements that don't quite support the booking she's requesting, Sarah continued diplomatically. Through my office's smart glass, I could see my reflection alongside the mountain views. The woman my family thought was struggling to establish herself in some computer job, while they celebrated Kavya's legal career as the family's greatest success story. What's the standard protocol for insufficient financial documentation? I asked, though I knew the answer perfectly. We require either full payment upfront, acceptable collateral, or a qualified cosigner with verified assets. Otherwise, we decline the booking and suggest more suitable alternatives. Alternatives that wouldn't include the rose garden ceremony or crystal chandelier reception that Kavya had spent Sunday evening describing in detail to anyone who'd listen. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. "Kavya's so excited about calling the venue today. Fingers crossed." Crossed fingers. "Follow standard protocol," I told Sarah. "If she can't meet our financial requirements, provide her with our preferred vendor list for venues in her actual budget range." Understood. Should I mention that the owner sometimes makes exceptions for special circumstances? I considered this carefully. The Grandview estate operated as a business, not a charity, but I had occasionally waived deposits for non-profit events or local families facing genuine hardship. Kavya's situation was different. She could afford a beautiful wedding, just not the specific fantasy she'd decided she deserved. No exceptions this time. Standard business practices only. After ending the call, I returned to reviewing quarterly reports from my other properties. The hospitality portfolio I'd built over 8 years now included 12 venues across 3 states, from intimate boutique hotels to grand event estates. What had started as a single distressed property purchase had evolved into a comprehensive luxury hospitality company. At 2 p.m., my phone exploded with messages from the family group chat. "Kavya, 2:17 p.m. This is ridiculous. The Grandview estate is being completely unreasonable about their requirements." "Mom, 2:22 p.m. What happened, beta?" "Kavya, 2:24 p.m. They want full payment upfront or some impossible financial verification. Like we're trying to scam them or something." "Rohan, 2:31 p.m. Maybe we should look at other venues. There are plenty of beautiful places that don't require jumping through hoops." "Kavya, 2:33 p.m. This is our dream venue. There has to be another way." I watched the conversation unfold while reviewing the afternoon's property management reports. By 3 p.m., Kavya had convinced herself that the Grandview estate's policies were specifically designed to exclude regular people, in favor of trust fund babies and corporate events. "Kavya, 3:45 p.m. I'm going to drive up there tomorrow and speak to someone in person. This whole situation is probably just a misunderstanding." "Dad, 3:52 p.m. Good idea. Sometimes face-to-face conversation works better than phone calls." "Aunt Priya, 4:15 p.m. Maya, you work with business systems, right? Do you know anything about event venue booking processes?" I stared at the message for several minutes, considering my response. My family's assumption that I worked with business systems wasn't entirely wrong. I did work with business systems, primarily as the person who owned and operated them. Maya, 4:28 p.m. Most venues have standard financial verification processes. It's probably just business protocol. Kavya, 4:31 p.m. Maya, can you maybe help me figure out how to present our financial information more effectively? You understand corporate stuff. The irony was staggering. Kavya wanted my help navigating the financial requirements of my own venue, while remaining blissfully unaware that her corporate stuff expertise was about to meet the reality of actual corporate ownership. Maya, 4:45 p.m. I'm sure you'll figure it out. Tuesday's drive to the Grandview estate would indeed clarify the situation, though probably not in the way Kavya expected. I spent the evening reviewing guest services protocols and ensuring my staff was prepared for what promised to be a very interesting site visit. Tuesday afternoon, I sat in the Grandview estate's owner's suite, watching through privacy-tinted windows as Kavya's silver Lexus wound up the estate's tree-lined driveway. She'd arrived precisely on time for her 2 p.m. appointment, having spent the morning, according to her Instagram stories, getting her hair done and selecting an outfit that projected successful professional who deserves respect. Sarah Chin knocked and entered my office. "Miss Patel has arrived. She's quite determined." "I can imagine. How do you want to handle this?" "Standard consultation process. I'll review our policies, show her the facilities and explain the financial requirements clearly. If she becomes confrontational, I'll suggest she speak with ownership about making special arrangements." Through the window, I watched Kavya emerge from her car wearing her courtroom suit and carrying a leather portfolio that probably contained bank statements, reference letters, and whatever documentation she hoped would override business reality. "Keep it professional," I said. "If she asks to speak with ownership, let me know." The consultation lasted 47 minutes. I could see Sarah leading Kavya through the gardens, the ballroom, and the terrace spaces that would indeed make a stunning wedding venue. Kavya's body language started confident, shifted to frustrated, and ended somewhere between desperate and furious. My office phone rang at exactly 2:47 p.m. "Maya," Sarah's voice carried carefully controlled amusement. "Ms. Patel would like to speak with the owner about making an exception to our financial policies. She's quite insistent that there's been some kind of misunderstanding. Send her up." I had 30 seconds to decide how to handle this moment. Stay behind my desk in full corporate authority mode, or meet her at the door like the sister she'd never recognized I'd become. Kavya knocked and entered without waiting for permission, her portfolio clutched defensively against her chest. "I understand you're the owner here, and I need to explain that your staff has made some kind of mistake about." She stopped mid-sentence, staring at me with the expression of someone whose brain was refusing to process contradictory information. "Maya? What are you doing here?" "I work here," I said simply, gesturing toward the chair across from my desk. "Work here? But this is the Grandview estate. This is a luxury venue. You can't possibly. I mean, what kind of work could you?" She trailed off as her gaze traveled around my office. The mahogany desk, the architectural awards on the walls, the framed photos of celebrity events we'd hosted, the business degree from Stanford that she'd never bothered to ask about. "I own it, Kavya." The words hung in the air like smoke from an expensive cigar. Kavya sank into the chair without invitation, her portfolio sliding from nerveless fingers. "Own it? You can't own this place. This venue costs, the booking fees alone, $50,000 for Saturday events," I confirmed. $75 for peak season weekends. Plus catering minimums, service charges, and damage deposits. Kavya's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. "Finally, how long?" "For years. I bought it when the previous owners defaulted on their loans. Spent 2 years renovating, 1 year building the business reputation, and the last year enjoying consistent profitability." The silence stretched until Kavya found her voice again. "The computer job? Tech consulting firm. 47 employees. 12 million in annual revenue." Her perfect wedding venue belonged to the sister she'd relegated to kitchen duties. The conversation that followed was brief and professionally courteous. I explained that the Grandview Estate's policies applied equally to all potential clients, family relationships notwithstanding. Kavya could meet our financial requirements, provide acceptable collateral, or consider venues more aligned with her actual budget. She chose option 3, storming out while muttering about family loyalty and deliberately sabotaging her wedding. Within hours, the family group chat exploded. "Kavya, 4:23 p.m., Maya has been lying to us for years. She owns luxury venues and let me think I couldn't afford my dream wedding." "Mom, 4:35 p.m., Maya, is this true? How could you not tell us?" "Dad, 4:41 p.m., we need to have a family meeting about this immediately." I responded once. The Grandview Estate operates as a business, not a family favor bank. Standard policies apply to all clients. The aftermath unfolded predictably. Kavya's wedding ended up at a perfectly lovely vineyard that actually suited her budget and guest count better than our grand ballroom would have. She spent 6 months explaining to relatives why her dream venue hadn't worked out, carefully omitting the ownership details. Mom struggled with cognitive dissonance between her successful daughter and her assumptions about my computer work. Dad researched my company obsessively, trying to understand how he'd missed signs of substantial financial success. The family dynamics shifted permanently. No more requests for Maya to handle logistics or work behind the scenes. No more casual dismissals of my career or capabilities. No more assumptions about who in the family had made it and who was still figuring things out. Some revelations change everything. This one just made the truth visible.
"Emergency, Mom's had a heart attack." My husband's voice cracked with panic as he gripped his phone. "We need to go home now." I stared at the pristine waters of the Maldives beach, watching our dream vacation crumble before my eyes. "My name is Alexandra, and after 5 years of nonstop work and saving every penny, My husband James and I have finally managed to book our dream getaway. We've been here exactly 26 hours. What happened? I asked, already knowing who had made the emergency call. Linda, my mother-in-law, had spent the last month trying to sabotage this trip. Dad says she collapsed at home. James was already shoving things into our suitcase, his hands shaking. They're taking her to St. Mary's Hospital. Alex, we have to go. I took a deep breath, memories of the past 5 years flooding back. Every time James and I had planned something for ourselves, Linda had found a way to interfere. Our weekend trips mysteriously coincided with her emergencies. Our date nights were interrupted by her urgent needs for help with basic household tasks. But a heart attack? This was a new level even for her. Of course, I said, keeping my voice steady. I'll start packing while you book the flights. As James rushed to call the airlines, I looked at our hotel room, the overwater bungalow we dreamed about for years. The champagne we planned to drink at sunset sat unopened. The snorkel gear we'd rented for tomorrow's reef tour lay untouched. My phone buzzed with a message from my best friend Emma, who worked as a nurse at St. Mary's. Your MIL just walked into the ER demanding immediate attention. She's shouting about chest pains, but she drove herself here and seems energetic. I stared at the message, my suspicions confirmed. But how could I tell James? He was already in a panic, talking about cashing in our vacation insurance and paying whatever it took to get home immediately. Got us on the next flight, James announced, his face pale with worry. We leave in 3 hours. It's going to cost a fortune, but Mom needs us. I sat down on the bed, choosing my next words carefully. James, before we leave, I think we should call the hospital directly. He frowned. Dad already told us what's happening. We don't have time to. Please, I said firmly, just call the hospital. Ask about her condition. Maybe it was something in my tone, or maybe deep down he had his own doubts. But James picked up his phone. I watched as he dialed St. Mary's and asked about Linda Mitchell. The color drained from his face as he listened. What do you mean she's arguing with the triage nurse? I thought, Dad said she had a heart attack. I pulled out my phone and showed him Emma's message. James sat down heavily beside me, the realization hitting him hard. She's faking it, he whispered, more a statement than a question. She's actually faking a heart attack to bring us home. Before I could respond, another message from Emma popped up. You need to see this. I'm sending you security footage from the ER entrance. Your MIL parked in the ambulance bay, fixed her makeup, then stumbled in clutching her chest. The performance would be impressive if it wasn't so manipulative. The video loaded, and there she was, Linda, parking her Mercedes precisely between the lines, checking her reflection in the rearview mirror, and then transforming into a woman in desperate medical distress as soon as she opened the car door. James watched the footage in silence, his expression shifting from shock to anger. 5 years, he said finally. For 5 years, every time we tried to do something for ourselves, she's pulled something like this. But this is too far. I wrapped my arm around his shoulders, feeling his body tremble with a mix of emotions. I'm so sorry, James. No, he said, standing up suddenly. I'm the one who's sorry. Sorry I let her manipulate us for so long. Sorry I didn't see what she was doing. He picked up his phone again, but this time his hands were steady. I need to make 2 calls, one to cancel our emergency flights and one to tell my mother exactly what I think about her little performance. I watched as he stepped out onto our private deck, phone in hand. The sun was setting over the ocean, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. We hadn't lost our vacation after all, but something had shifted. For the first time in our marriage, James was truly seeing his mother's behavior for what it was. My phone buzzed again. Another update from Emma. Hospital security is getting involved. Your MIL is demanding to be admitted despite normal vitals and clear EKG. She keeps saying her son is flying home to be with her, and the hospital will be sorry if they discharge her before you arrive. I couldn't help but smile. Linda had finally overplayed her hand, and she had no idea what was coming. James's voice carried through the glass doors of our bungalow as he confronted his mother. I've seen the security footage, Mom. The hospital sent it to us. How could you do this? I could hear Linda's shrill protests even from where I sat. Security footage? That's private medical information. I'll sue them. I'm having a medical emergency, and you're abandoning me for some vacation. A medical emergency? James's voice grew harder than I'd ever heard it. "The footage shows you parking your car, checking your makeup, and then pretending to collapse. The doctors say there's nothing wrong with you. Those doctors don't know anything. I raised you better than this, James. What kind of son chooses a beach over his dying mother?" I watched as James gripped the balcony railing, his knuckles turning white. "You're not dying, Mom. You're lying. Just like you lied about needing emergency plumbing repairs during our anniversary dinner. Just like you lied about falling down the stairs when we tried to go camping last summer." The silence that followed was deafening. Then Linda's voice came back, smaller but somehow more venomous. "That girl has turned you against me. Alexandra never understood our family's closeness. She's always tried to come between us." "Stop." James cut her off. "Alex has put up with your manipulation for 5 years. She's never complained, never tried to come between us. But I see it now, Mom. I see everything." Emma sent another update. "Your MIL just threw her phone at a nurse when they suggested she was having an anxiety attack rather than a heart attack. Security's been called again." I stepped out onto the deck, placing a gentle hand on James's shoulder. He leaned into my touch, still holding the phone. "I'm done, Mom," he said firmly. "We're staying on our vacation. If you actually have a medical emergency, the doctors at St. Mary's are more than capable of handling it. But this manipulation, these lies, they stop now." "You'll regret this," Linda hissed. "When something really happens to me, you'll wish you'd been a better son." "No, Mom. The only thing I regret is not standing up to you sooner. Goodbye." He ended the call and turned to me, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "I'm so sorry, Alex. I should have seen it years ago." Before I could respond, his phone buzzed with a message from his father. "Your mother's being escorted out of the hospital. She's hysterical. Please come home and help deal with this." James looked at the message, then at me, then at the beautiful sunset over the ocean. For a moment, I saw the old uncertainty cross his face, the ingrained response to rush to his mother's aid. "You know what?" he said, putting his phone on silent and placing it face down on the deck table. "Dad enabled her behavior just as much as I did. They can handle this themselves." Emma's updates kept coming. "Your MIL is now in the parking lot, telling anyone who'll listen that her son is abandoning her on her deathbed. Hospital security has informed her she'll be trespassing if she comes back without an actual emergency." I couldn't help but laugh, and after a moment, James joined in. The tension of the last few hours broke like a wave, leaving behind something lighter, cleaner. "Do you know what I want to do?" James asked, pulling me close. "I want to open that champagne we've been saving. I want to sit on this deck with my wife, watch the sunset, and start living our life without jumping at my mother's every call." "Are you sure?" I asked softly. "This is a big change." He kissed my forehead, his embrace steady and sure. "I've never been more sure of anything. Well, except marrying you." As we sat there, watching the sky turn from gold to purple, our phones kept buzzing with updates. Linda had called every family member, spinning a tale of abandonment and betrayal. James's father sent increasingly demanding messages. Even Linda's sister chimed in, berating James for his callousness. But for the first time in our marriage, we let the drama wash past us like the waves below our bungalow. James turned to me, his eyes clear and determined. "I think it's time we set some real boundaries," he said. "Not just for this vacation, but for our life together." I nodded, feeling a hope I hadn't dared to embrace in years. "What did you have in mind?" "First, no more emergency responses without verification. Second, we start making plans for our life. Real plans that don't revolve around my mother's latest crisis. And third," he smiled, a hint of mischief in his eyes, "we turn off our phones and enjoy the rest of the sunset properly." As the last rays of sun painted the sky, I curled into James's embrace, feeling the warmth of more than just the tropical evening. Something had shifted, not just in our vacation, but in our marriage. Linda's latest manipulation hadn't ruined our trip. It had given us something far more valuable than a week in paradise. It had given us our freedom. The rest of our vacation was everything we dreamed of and more. Without Linda's constant interruptions, James and I rediscovered what it felt like to just be us. We snorkeled through coral reefs, had candlelit dinners on the beach, and spent long afternoons doing absolutely nothing but enjoying each other's company. But reality waited for us back home, and Linda wasn't done yet. When we landed at the airport, Emma was waiting for us with news. Your MIL has been busy, she said, hugging me tight. She's been at the hospital 3 more times, each time with a different emergency. They finally had to threaten her with legal action to make her stop. James just shook his head, no longer surprised by his mother's antics. And Dad? How's he handling it? He's been calling everyone, trying to fix things, Emma replied. But something interesting happened while you were gone. The hospital's patient advocacy team got involved after your MIL's performance. They're recommending she get psychological help. As we drove home, we found our house surrounded by family members' cars. Linda had apparently called an intervention. Ready? I asked James, seeing his jaw tighten. He squeezed my hand. More than ready. Inside, Linda sat in our living room like a queen holding court, surrounded by concerned relatives. She'd been crying, her makeup strategically smeared for maximum effect. My own son, she wailed when she saw us. Look what she's done to him. He left his mother to die while he played on a beach. James's father stood up, his face stern. Son, this has gone far enough. Your mother needs. No, Dad, James cut him off. What Mom needs is professional help. We've all seen the hospital footage. We all know what really happened. Linda's sister gasped. What hospital footage? I pulled out my phone, playing the video Emma had sent. The room fell silent as they watched Linda parking perfectly, checking her makeup, then dramatically stumbling into the ER. That's not. Linda sputtered, but for once, she had no story ready. There's more, James said quietly. The hospital has documentation of every fake emergency you've created over the past 5 years. Every time you've tried to manipulate us, every lie you've told. They're recommending psychiatric evaluation. The room erupted in chaos. Linda burst into fresh tears. But this time, fewer people rushed to comfort her. Her sister, who had always taken her side, sat back with a thoughtful look on her face. We're not doing this anymore, James announced, his voice carrying over the commotion. Alex and I are setting boundaries. No more emergency calls without verification. No more dropping everything because Mom feels lonely. And if you want to be part of our lives, you need to get help. Linda tried one last tactic. After everything I've sacrificed for you, the only thing you've sacrificed, I finally spoke up, is your relationship with your son. But you can still fix that, if you're willing to do the work. The silence that followed was heavy with possibility. James's father was the first to move, walking over to stand beside his son. She's right, he said quietly. Linda, this has to stop. I've already made an appointment with Dr. Carter. We're going to counseling together. Linda looked around the room, realizing for the first time that her audience was no longer automatically on her side. Her sister was nodding along with James's father. Even her closest allies were looking at her with new eyes. I just didn't want to lose you, she whispered to James. Mom, you were losing me anyway, he replied gently. Every manipulation, every lie, every ruined moment, they all pushed me further away. The only way to keep me in your life is to get help and start building honest relationships. 6 months later, our lives look very different. Linda started therapy, reluctantly at first, but gradually with more commitment. She still struggles with boundaries, but now there are consequences when she crosses them. We've had peaceful family dinners, uninterrupted date nights, and even a weekend getaway without a single emergency call. Last week, she did something that shocked us all. She apologized. Not a manipulative, self-pitying apology, but a real one, acknowledging the harm she caused and the work she still needs to do. I was so afraid of being alone, she admitted during a family session. I thought if I kept you close, kept you needing me, I'd never lose you. Instead, I was pushing you away. James and I still have the sunset photo from that evening in the Maldives framed in our living room. It reminds us of more than just a beautiful moment. It marks the day we finally broke free from the chains of manipulation and started living life on our own terms. Sometimes the best endings don't tie everything up perfectly. Linda is still working on herself, and we're still learning how to navigate our new boundaries. But now, when our phones ring, we don't feel that instant dread. We're no longer waiting for the next crisis, the next emergency, the next manipulation. We're just living our lives together, exactly as we should have been all along. Your husband is marrying Amanda right now. My mother-in-law's voice dripped with malicious delight through the phone. He won't divorce you or give you a penny. You get nothing. I stood in my kitchen, calmly stirring honey into my morning tea as Margaret continued her gleeful tirade. The sunlight streaming through the windows felt warm on my face, and I couldn't help but smile at the irony of the moment. "Thank you for letting me know," I replied softly, taking a sip of my tea. There was a pause on the other end. Clearly, this wasn't the reaction she'd expected. I could almost see her face twisting in confusion. "Did you hear what I said?" she snapped. "David is getting married to Amanda. Right now, at our family church. You're finished." "Yes, I heard you perfectly, Margaret. Is there anything else?" "My name is Olivia Parker, and at 34, I was listening to my mother-in-law announce my husband's illegal second marriage with all the excitement of a child on Christmas morning. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd been 3 steps ahead of their little plan for months." "You're taking this rather well," Margaret said suspiciously. "Finally realizing your place, are you? David deserves someone young and beautiful like Amanda. Someone from a good family." I glanced at the thick manila envelope sitting on my kitchen counter, the one I'd received from my lawyer yesterday. "I suppose we all get what we deserve in the end," I replied. The signs had started appearing 3 months ago. David's late nights at the office became more frequent, his excuses more elaborate. His phone was suddenly password protected, and he started taking calls in another room. But the real red flag was when he insisted I add his mother as a co-signer on our joint account just in case anything happens. That was the moment I knew something was coming. You see, David had always been his mother's perfect son, following her every suggestion, seeking her approval in all things. When we first married 7 years ago, Margaret had been certain I wouldn't last. I wasn't from the right social circle, didn't have the right connections. A simple teacher, she'd sneered at our wedding reception, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. But I wasn't just a teacher. I was my father's daughter, and he hadn't raised me to be naive. As a retired detective, he taught me to trust my instincts and always have a backup plan. So when David started acting suspicious, I started paying attention. It didn't take long to discover the truth. Amanda was Margaret's best friend's daughter, fresh out of college and working as David's new assistant. The same Amanda who'd been at every family dinner for the past 2 months, batting her eyelashes at my husband while Margaret looked on approvingly. "I just thought you should know," Margaret continued, her voice sickly sweet. "You'll need to be out of the house by next week. David and Amanda will need somewhere to live after all." I took another sip of my tea, savoring the sweetness. "That's thoughtful of you to warn me." "Well, I'm nothing if not considerate," she preened. "Though I doubt you'll find anywhere nice to live on a teacher's salary. Perhaps if you'd been a better wife, things would be different." I thought about the documentation hidden in my study, the photographs, the bank statements, the video footage. I thought about the private investigator's report sitting in my lawyer's office and the official papers that would be served within the hour. "You know what, Margaret? You're absolutely right. Things will be different." She laughed, a harsh sound that echoed through the phone. "Finally accepting reality, are you?" "More than you know," I replied. "Give Amanda my congratulations. I'm sure she'll make a lovely bride." I ended the call before Margaret could respond, setting my phone down next to the manila envelope. Inside were copies of everything my lawyer would be serving to David, Margaret, and the family church within the hour. Proof of conspiracy to commit marriage fraud, evidence of attempted financial manipulation, and documentation of every step they'd taken to try to leave me with nothing. The doorbell rang, right on schedule. I opened it to find Jim, my father's old partner and now a private investigator, standing there with his signature grim smile. "Everything's in place," he said, handing me a small USB drive. "The evidence has been delivered to all relevant parties. Your husband's second wedding should be getting some unexpected guests right about now." I nodded, thinking about the scene that must be unfolding at the church. The police arriving just as David and Amanda prepared to exchange vows. Margaret's face as she realized her perfect plan was falling apart. The guests witnessing it all. "Thank you, Jim," I said, pocketing the drive. "I couldn't have done this without you." He shook his head. "Your father taught you well, kid. Always be prepared." I closed the door and walked back to my kitchen, where my tea was getting cold. My phone was already buzzing with messages. No doubt the news was spreading fast. But I wasn't ready to deal with any of that yet. Instead, I picked up the manila envelope and walked to my study, On my desk sat a framed photo of my father and me at my college graduation. He was smiling proudly, his detective's badge gleaming on his belt. "You were right, Dad," I whispered to the photo. Sometimes the best defense is a good offense. The chaos unfolded exactly as I'd anticipated. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing with messages and calls, each one more frantic than the last. I let them all go to voicemail, calmly sipping my tea as I imagined the scene at the church. The first text came from my sister-in-law, Emma. "OMG, Olivia, the police just stormed into the church. What did you do?" Then from various family friends. "Is it true? Did David really try to commit marriage fraud? Margaret is having a meltdown in front of everyone. The police are questioning Amanda's parents." I smiled, remembering how I'd gathered all the evidence. It had started 3 months ago when I noticed David's strange behavior. Instead of confronting him, I channeled my inner detective, just as my father had taught me. First came the basic surveillance. I hired Jim to follow David and Amanda, documenting their meetings, their intimate dinners, the nights they spent planning their future together. But the real goldmine was Margaret's involvement. My mother-in-law had orchestrated everything. She'd introduced Amanda to David, arranged for her to get the job as his assistant, and even helped them plan the wedding. What they didn't know was that every meeting they had at her house was recorded, thanks to the security system she'd bragged about installing. The one that backed up all footage to a cloud server that her tech-illiterate self had never properly secured. My phone rang again. This time it was David. After 6 calls in a row, I finally answered. "How could you do this to me?" he demanded, his voice shaking with rage. "You've ruined everything." "I've ruined everything?" I kept my voice level. "That's interesting, coming from the man who just tried to commit marriage fraud." "It wasn't fraud," he protested. "I was going to divorce you eventually. I just needed time to what, David? To transfer all our assets, to make sure I was left with nothing, just like you and your mother planned." There was a telling silence on the other end. "How did you know?" he finally asked, his voice smaller now. "You forget who my father was," I replied. "He taught me to spot a conspiracy from a mile away. You, your mother, and Amanda weren't exactly subtle." I heard commotion in the background, followed by Margaret's shrill voice. "Give me that phone." "You conniving little witch," Margaret spat after grabbing the phone from David. "You've humiliated our entire family. Amanda is devastated." "Fascinating," I replied calmly. "Tell me, Margaret, did you really think I wouldn't find out about the offshore account? The one where you've been helping David hide money for the past 2 months?" Another shocked silence. "Or perhaps we should discuss the fraudulent loan applications you helped him file, the ones with my forged signature." "You can't prove any of that," she whispered, but I could hear the uncertainty in her voice. "Actually, I can. Check your email. I'm sure the police have some questions about those documents too." I heard the sound of heels clicking on church floor tiles, followed by gasps and murmured conversations. Clearly, Margaret was checking her phone. "How did you get these?" she demanded. "Let's just say David isn't the only one who knows how to plan ahead. By the way, you really should change your email password." Using Amanda's birth date was a bit obvious. The evidence was comprehensive: emails between Margaret and Amanda's parents discussing the plan, bank statements showing the money transfers, even recordings of their conversations about how to ensure I wouldn't get any of the assets in the eventual divorce. "The police are very interested in the forged loan documents," I continued. "Fraud charges are serious, Margaret. But I'm sure you knew that when you were practicing my signature." "You've made a terrible mistake," Margaret hissed. "We'll fight this." "Go ahead," I replied. "I'm sure the judge will be very interested in the video footage from your security cameras, especially the conversation where you and David discussed how to transfer assets without my knowledge. The sound quality is excellent, by the way. You really got your money's worth with that system." I could hear David in the background, demanding to know what footage I was talking about. Amanda was crying. Someone was asking about lawyers. "One more thing," I added before hanging up. "You might want to cancel the honeymoon reservations. I don't think David will be traveling anytime soon. His passport has been flagged." I ended the call and walked to my study window, looking out at the garden I planted when we first moved in. David had always complained about the time I spent there, never understanding that it was my refuge, my place to think and plan. The garden had taught me patience. something that had served me well these past 3 months. While they rushed to execute their plan, I'd taken my time, gathering evidence methodically, building an airtight case that would leave them no wiggle room. My phone buzzed with a text from Jim. Police have everything they need. David and Margaret are being taken in for questioning. Need me to come over? No thanks, I replied. I think I'll spend some time in my garden. It's a beautiful day for new beginnings. The aftermath was swift and decisive. Within weeks, David and Margaret were facing multiple fraud charges. Amanda and her family had quickly distanced themselves, claiming they'd been misled about the situation. The perfect plan they crafted had crumbled like a house of cards. I sat across from my lawyer, Sarah, as she laid out the final divorce terms. The evidence I gathered had left David with no negotiating power. He's agreed to all our terms, Sarah said, a satisfied smile on her face. Full division of assets, the house stays in your name, and he's responsible for all legal fees. Margaret's also facing separate charges for the forged documents. How's he taking it? I asked, more curious than concerned. Not well, especially since the school board suspended him pending investigation. Turns out they're not fond of principals who commit fraud. I nodded, thinking about the prestigious private school where David worked. His reputation had been everything to him. Another reason Margaret had wanted to handle the divorce quietly. And Margaret? Sarah's smile widened. She's been remarkably quiet since discovering all her security footage was logged as evidence. The country club isn't quite as welcoming to her these days. My phone buzzed with a text from Emma, David's sister. Can we meet for coffee? There's something you should know. I met Emma at our usual cafe the next day. Unlike her mother, she'd always been kind to me, though careful to stay neutral in family conflicts. Mom's selling her house, she said without preamble. She can't afford the legal fees, and none of her friends will help. Their reputations, you know. I sipped my latte, remembering all the times Margaret had hosted parties in that house, parading Amanda around while making snide comments about my common background. David's staying with her, Emma continued. Amanda's family threatened to sue them both for dragging their daughter into this mess. It's quite the scandal. And how are you handling it? She looked down at her coffee. I should have warned you. I saw the signs but didn't want to believe Mom would go this far. It's not your fault, I assured her. Your mother made her choices. You know what's ironic? Emma gave a bitter laugh. Mom always said you weren't good enough for our family, but you're the one who outsmarted them all. The following week, I received an unexpected visit from Amanda. She looked younger than I remembered, her confident demeanor replaced by nervous energy. I'm sorry, she blurted out as soon as I opened the door. I know it doesn't make up for anything, but I needed to say it. Margaret, she made it all sound so romantic. A secret wedding, true love conquering all. And the part about leaving me penniless, was that romantic too? She had the grace to look ashamed. I was stupid. I didn't think about you as a real person. Margaret said you were just after David's money, that you trapped him. While plotting to take everything I'd worked for, I finished for her. Quite the fairy tale. Amanda twisted her hands together. My parents are furious. They're making me transfer to a different university to avoid the scandal. I wanted you to know I never meant for things to go this far. I studied her face, seeing not the temptress Margaret had cultivated, but a young woman who'd been manipulated by a master player. Learn from this, I told her. Never let someone else write your story. After she left, I walked through my garden, breathing in the scent of the roses I planted years ago. They'd survived drought, storms, and Margaret's attempts to redesign my garden to be more suitable. Like me, they'd grown stronger through adversity. The final divorce papers arrived on a sunny Tuesday morning. As I signed them, I thought about the day I'd married David, how Margaret had whispered, "You'll never truly be one of us," during our family photos. She'd been right about that, at least. I was never meant to be one of them. Someone who valued appearance over integrity, who confused manipulation with strength. Jim stopped by that evening with a bottle of champagne. Your dad would be proud, he said, raising his glass. He always said you had good instincts. I learned from the best, I replied, thinking of all the times my father had told me to trust my gut, to gather evidence, to be prepared. Later, alone in my study, I opened my father's old case notebook, the one he'd given me when I graduated college. Inside, he'd written, "Remember, sweetheart, justice doesn't always wear a badge." Sometimes it just requires patience, preparation, and the courage to stand your ground. I closed the notebook smiling. David and Margaret had underestimated me, seeing only what they wanted to see, a simple teacher they could easily discard. They never understood that I'd been playing a longer game, one where justice was the ultimate prize. My garden was blooming, my home was peaceful, and my future was my own. Sometimes I realized the best revenge isn't about getting even. It's about growing stronger, blooming where you're planted, and knowing when to cut away the weeds that try to strangle your growth.